Hope you are safe and sound and doing well. Uh, Today, I would like to present my reflections on a bit from Surdhar. And Surdhar, as it has multi-dimensional themes and topics. So today's topic, or the bit concerned to the topic, is about cranes, a migratory bird that comes from Siberia to Sindh during the days of wheat season, and it is called Kunj. However, people of Sindh love to those Kunj cranes, and they think it as a messenger of love between the two regions and among the people. So the bait is Malau Kunji Matkar Chor Mahiye Chak Fatiyun de Frak se Ghar Gharindyu Ketro. Shabdalati Vitai in this bait uh, brings together the crane bird, the silence, the wound of separation, and the emotional burden of migration. Here, the bird is not only element of nature; it becomes mirror of human condition too. And the narrator says to the crane that "Manlao Kunji, don't, oh crane, don't lament. Manlao Kunji, don't sing, don't make that type of cry, very despair cry. So, O crane, don't lament, be silent, matkar. Chor mahiye chak. Don't strike the wound of heart again. Patyun de frak, those wounded by separation, se ghar gharinju ketro. How long they will remain confined within their homes. So in this way, this bait has uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 uh, steps. 6 steps of a behavior of love, behavior of separation, behavior of migration, and behavior and symbol of love. Man love. Don't cry. Don't do that type of despaired voice. Matkar. Keep silence. Chor mahiye chak. Don't disturb my wounds of my heart. Fatyunje frak. Those which are who are very much injured and disturbed by separation. Say ghar ghar in through how much they will long stay at their homes. If we are looking at this by linguistically, then kunj is Sindhi word and it means crane, particularly the migratory crane familiar to the Sindhi landscape. In Sindhi poetry, kunj is strongly associated with migration, seasonal movement, longing, separation, and companions, return, and memory of homeland. The word, therefore, carries considerable cultural and emotional semantic weight. Kunj. And now people have kept names of their uh, livestock and even the ladies too. Literally, matkar literally means be silent. The imperative gives the verse dramatic immediacy. The speaker is not simply describing a crane, he is addressing nature directly. This is an example of apostrophe, a poetic device in which a speaker addresses an absent, non human, or inanimate entity as though it could understand. Chore. Here, the semantic field is connected with disturbing, stirring, and causing pain rather than merely physical movement. The crane's cry becomes an emotional disturbance. Chalk. Chalk means wound, the cuts. particularly a cut or open wound. The metaphor is painful. Sound, it ignites memory, and then it disturbs emotional wound. The crane's call does not create the wound. It reopens an existing wound. The wound is already there. So as Rumi has said that wound is the place from where light will come in. Phatyum. Phatyum means wound or sore, gives the sense of wounds. The shift from chalk to phatyum intensifies the imagery. The wound is no longer merely a metaphorical cut. It has become a continuing condition. Frak. Frak is a Persian word meaning separation, estrangement, or abuse from beloved. It belongs to the central vocabulary of classical Persian and Sindhi mystical poetry. Wasal is union and Frak is separation. For Latif, however, Frak is not simply romantic absence. It can signify the soul's painful distance from beloved, homeland, community, or ultimate spiritual reality. Ghar means home or household. Its placement creates an important contrast. Kunj to the open sky and migration versus ghar is enclosure and confinement, place of stay, place of retirement, place of residence. Thus, the bird's freedom and the human beings' confinement are placed against one another. Then, if we are looking zoologically, because the crane is a bird and a beautiful bird, its cry and its singing is very much beautiful and heart touching. So, it is a real animal. Latif's choice of the crane is remarkably appropriate from a zoological perspective. The cranes that migrate through the border of Sindh, Thar region, are part of a long established pattern of seasonal bird migration across South Asia and South and Central Asia. The Demoiselle crane or Anthropoides virgo is particularly associated with the migration through Pakistan. This is zoological name of the crane. Several biological characteristics make crane poetically significant because it reflects migration. Migration is the characteristic of crane. Cranes travel considerable distances between breeding and wintering grounds. Migration naturally generates the poetic concepts of departure, distance, longing, return. Second is social behavior. Cranes are highly social birds and commonly travel in groups. They don't break their groups. Consequently, separation from a flock has an emotional resonance that humans can easily recognize. Third is vocal communication. Cranes are conspicuous vocal birds. Their calls can carry over substantial distances. Latif's poetic imagination transforms this biological reality into emotional communication. The crane calls, the human remembrance, the wound of separation opens. Fourth is seasonal appearance. The arrival and departure of migratory bird can function as natural calendar. The pastoral and agrarian societies, birds were therefore not simply wildlife, they were indicators of seasonal and ecological change. Environment resumed it because due to poor signals it was disturbed. So now we are focusing on environmental analysis of the Ved. The Ved contains an important ecological consciousness, and Latif does not isolate human beings from nature. Instead, the emotional life of humanity is embedded within the movement and sounds of the natural world. Nature as an ecological calendar. The appearances of crane communicates information about season. People remember it. Climatic conditions. People remember it. Migration. It clicks people that now the days have come and cranes will be arrived there. And then water availability, landscape transformation, and the movement of animal population. Thus, the crane functions almost like an ecological indicator species. Indicator of ecology, indicator of season, indicator of even crops, and indicator of movement. Human animal relationship. The speaker hears crane and responds emotionally. Malo kunji matkar, chor mahiye chak. He attributes the situation, or the narrator attributes the situation with himself. Bird, season, to the landscape, to the livelihood, and the emotion. Modern environmental studies often emphasize the interconnectedness of species and ecosystems. Latif's poetry expresses a similar interconnectedness through poetic rather than scientific language. The landscape as a shared home. The landscape is not just merely the piece of land, but it is a shared home. There are effectively two homes in the bed, the crane's migratory world and then the human household. The crane crosses geographical boundaries while the human suffers within domestic boundaries. This produces a fascinating ecological paradox. One species is very much free and living in the natural environment, and the other species, means human being, is enclosed within the walls or enclosures made by himself. The migrating bird possesses geographical freedom, while the separated human experiences psychological confinement. And by the touchstone of crane, Shabdulati Bitai, it reminds a human being that how you have been very much bound in that way. Then romantic analysis. At the romantic level, the Bait is fundamentally a poetry of longing. The crane's cry becomes the voice of absent beloved. The emotional structure can be represented as crane's call, then remembrance of separation, and then separation irritates the wound and it creates restlessness. The beloved does not even have to appear in the poem. Absence becomes the central presence. By focusing on absence, Shah Latif brings to the fore the presence. The crane as messenger. The crane resembles the classical poetic figure of the messenger bird. Its movement between distant places makes it capable immediately of connecting. Here and there, lover and beloved, present and absent, homeland and distant land. The bird therefore becomes an intermediary between separated worlds. At the one place, Central Asia is its motherland of the bird, and on the other side, it arrives in Sindh. So in this way, it is an ecological connectivity too. Why does the speaker ask the crane to be silent? This is one of the most psychologically subtle aspects of Beth. Normally, the lover wants to hear the beloved's voice. Here, however, the sound of the crane is unbearable. Why? Because memory itself has become painful. The speaker effectively says, Your cry reminds me of what I have lost. Malo kunji matkar chor mein hai chak. Therefore, your beautiful voice becomes painful to me. This is paradox of longing. What one loves can also cause suffering. Philosophical analysis of this faith would be that philosophical depth of faith emerges from relationship between sound, memory, separation, and selfhood. Separation creates consciousness. Here, separation is not threat. In poetry of Latif, separation is opportunity. When the beloved is present, one experiences presence. When the beloved disappears, consciousness begins to dwell upon absence. Thus, Frak makes absence psychologically presence. The beloved may be physically absent, but emotionally the beloved becomes more powerful. The wound is existential. Chalk is more than a physical wound. It represents an existential wound produced by separation. The crane does not necessarily cause the suffering. It reveals suffering that already exists. This is important philosophical distinction. External events after awaken internal realities. The crane's cry becomes a catalyst for consciousness, catalyst for memory. External events in this way create very uh, uh, touchy feelings. The crane's cry becomes a catalyst for consciousness. Freedom and confinement. The crane travels freely across landscapes, whereas the separated people remain in their homes. This creates a philosophical opposition, crane versus human. Crane is in migration, human is in confinement. Crane lives under uh, open sky, and human lives in a house around the enclosure or walls. Crane is in movement, and human is stationary. Crane calls, and human is in silence. Natural freedom. Crane is in natural freedom. Human is in emotional imprisonment. Latif therefore turns an ordinary bird into a vehicle for thinking about human freedom. Mystical dimension of this faith, although mystical for especially for philosophical analysis, this faith also has an unmistakable Sufi potential. In Sufi poetics, muhabbat, firaq, talab, visal. Love generates longing, longing generates search, the search ultimately points towards union. The beloved can therefore operate simultaneously at two levels, human beloved and divine beloved. The frak of the lover can consequently be read as the soul's awareness of its distance from the divine. The crane's migratory movement can be symbolized the journey of the soul. Psychological interpretation of this bait will be the psychology of memory is focused here. The crane's cry functions as a trigger. Trigger is psychological term. The structure resembles sensory stimulus, memory, then emotional recall, then renewed suffering. A sound heard in the present activities in experience from the past. Therefore, Latif anticipates something that modern psychology recognizes clearly as memory is not merely stored information. Memory is not only stored information. Sensory stimuli can reactivate emotional experience. The crane's call is consequently both natural sound and psychological stimulus, strategic and human meaning. The bath can even be read in terms of human resilience. The wounded person has two possible responses to the separation: withdrawal or movement toward the beloved. He has both the options. The question implicit in say घर घारी द्यू के तो. Then comes the point. Is therefore significant that how long can the wounded remain confined within their homes? They must move towards the beloved. It means that they are not in favor of withdrawal. They do want to move towards the beloved. This is not simply a question about physical residence. It can represent the danger of allowing grief to become permanent stagnation. The crane paradoxically presents movement, while the wounded human represents immobility. Thus, bird becomes a silent lesson that life moves. Life is not stationary, death is stationary. The suffering self must eventually move with it. Overall interpretation of this Ved will be that the greatness of this Ved lies in fusion of zoology and metaphysics. The two great disciplines that are discussed are reflected through this Ved are zoology, fusion of the zoology and metaphysics. Both are interconnected. Latif observes a real migratory bird, its distinctive cry and seasonal movement, and transforms these ecological facts into a meditation on human separation. The crane simultaneously becomes a zoological creature, a migratory bird, an ecological indicator, a sign of seasonal movement, a romantic symbol, the voice of the absent beloved, a psychological trigger, awakening memories, a philosophical symbol, freedom versus confinement, a mystical symbol, the soul's longing for union. Central philosophical insight of this Ved will be that the crane does not merely fly across the landscape, it crosses the boundary between nature and human consciousness. That is the great point shared by Latif. Its cry becomes the sound of separation itself. Resonance of the cry awakens the separation. And perhaps the deepest irony of the Ved is that the crane is free because it can leave. The crane is free because it can leave. The lover suffers because he cannot. That is difference between the human being and cranes. The tension between migration and confinement, sound and silence, presence and absence, wound and healing is what gives this Ved extraordinary emotional and philosophical power. So this Ved is very much heart-touching Ved that reflecting Manlao Kunji, don't cry, O crane. Matkar, be silent. Chor mahi hai chak. Don't trigger my wounds of my heart. Fatyun je frag. Those who are injured and wounded by the separation, gargarindu ketro. How much long they will stay at their homes. So for leaving home, it is necessary to be injured into the process of love. So, in this way, making cry, singing a song, making a note of hurt is very much natural activity. However, that activity ignites the environment. Then the narrator says to the crane that be silent, matkar, because by your cry, my heart's wounds are being opened, are being triggered, are being in disturbance. So perfume they frag those who are in separated position, how long they will stay at their homes. So this was Latif, who has connected ecology with love, who has connected ecology with human beings, anthropology, and who have connected that love with social dimensions of any society, and also the connectivity of different regions as South Asia and Central Asia and then Sindh, and a bird, very much beautiful bird, crane, the symbol of love, symbol of separation, symbol of taking different messages to the other world. So thank you very much. You have listened, watched me, and I hope that you will share your valuable opinions on this video. Thank you very much.